Hi, welcome to SAPUI Wi-Fi tutorial. So today in this tutorial we are going to discuss something called as filters. So this is application which we have developed in the previous tutorial, like nothing but split application. So as I told you in the previous tutorial, we are going to implement the filters concept in this tutorial. So when you search for the students here, so as of now I did not implement this search concept, so we are going to implement the concept now. Okay, so let's go back to let's go to this student first page. Okay, so let me go back to the application. So if you can see here, this is the first view which is having the search field. Okay, what we are going to configure is we are going to configure something called as live change. So there is an event called live change event in SAP UI5 on top of this particular search field. Okay, so let's have a look at this documentation. Search field having the live change and search. There are two events in here, so we can use either live change or search. So I will tell you the difference between these two, so when we after implementing this. Okay, so let me configure the live change event. So when any value, when the live change, when we are going to change this particular value, so we are going to execute this particular method called handle student search. Okay, so we have to create this particular method called handle student search inside our first view controller. So let me go back to the first view controller and then let me create this method over here. So okay, so we have created a method and we need to implement this method. So when the user searches for that, we need to get that particular value first, right? So in case if you want to get the value, so obviously there is something called as anyways there is a O event available. So we need to get the O event like this. Okay, O event dot O source or get source. Okay, dot get value, it will give you the value which is entered in the search field, right? So once the O field is there, so then we are going to enter. Okay, we are going to apply filters on top of this list, right? So in case if you want to get this particular list, so we have to use the ID, right? So for that, let me go back to the view. Okay, so let me go back to the view, and in here let me give the ID to this particular list. So not this, sorry, and this is the list. Okay, so I have given ID to the list. Okay, once we give ID to the list, so what we can do is we can accept. Okay, so we can access, not accept, so we can access this particular list with the help of this ID. Yeah, so for that, let me go back to this one. So here, in case if you want to access this, so we can use this dot get view. So it will give you the view object. So there is something called as by ID method on top of that, so we can get that particular list object. Okay, so this dot get view dot by ID, so ID list, we are getting the student list. So once we get the student list, we can get the binding of this particular list. So let's say there is something called as list dot get binding of the items. Okay, list student list dot get binding, so we are giving the items binding. Okay, we are binded the items, right? So that's the reason we are just we have given items. So then we are getting the binding object in here, right? So once we get the binding object, okay, we can apply the filters on top of that. Okay, so how can we apply the filters? So in case if you want to create a filter, there is something called as sap.ui.filter. Okay, so sap.ui.model.filter. Okay, so there is a class available, and in this class, okay, we're going to create the filter object by passing the first name, okay, and the condition. Okay, by passing the first name, I mean this is the field on which you want to apply the filters. I want to apply the filters on top of the first name, and then this is a condition. If this condition, this property or the first name contains, okay, the first name contains the value which I entered. The value which I entered is this one, so that is this. If the value it contains this, then apply the filters. Then obviously we can use the new operator in here. So we are going to save this one to a different variable. Okay, that means we have created one filter object with this particular contains condition, right? So once you get the filter object, so anyways we have something called as binding object, and then you can directly bind this particular. So binding, so this is a binding, so we are getting this binding object dot filter, we are just passing this particular filter. So let's save this and go back to the browser and then refresh the browser. Okay, and remove that hash and then press enter. So here you can refresh the browser. Okay, now you can enter any value. Let's say student, student1, student2, student3. So let's say if I enter yes, so it will display all because yes is there in all the filters. Let's say let's enter 4. Okay, so now you can see only the I can see the student 4. Okay, because the student 4 contains that. If I enter 1, so student 1. If I enter 2, student 2. If I enter 3, I can say student 3. Yeah, so accordingly it is filtering the data, right? So let's say in case if you want to apply the filters on top of date of birth also, date of birth is nothing but here it is a string, right? So for that in case if you want to apply the filters on both, let's say for example either the user can search for the username or the date of birth, because we are showing this particular username and date of birth. So for that we have to create one more filter, right? So let me go back to the controller here, and let's have some let's have one more filter. Okay, the way we have created a filter object here, we need to create a filter object for the date of birth also, right? So for that I have created a filter like this. Okay, so date of birth and SAPUI filter, new SAPUI model dot filter. It's a new we are creating an object of the filter by passing the property date of birth, and then filter condition is contains the value which we entered. Okay, so then finally we have the two filters, and then what we can do is, so we can create the one more filter out of these two filters with an OR condition, right? So how can we create this? Again we need to create one more object like the same, so SAPUI filter. So in here we need to pass the array of filters, right? So this is array of filters which is having the two filters in it. Okay, this false indicates this is gonna create OR condition between these two filters. So with that, then finally we created one more filter called O filter out of these two filters. Now what we can do is, instead of passing this name filter, you can pass this filter. What is this? The newly created filter. Now it will apply the a filter on top of that. Okay, let's save this and go back to your browser. Okay, let's go back to your browser and then refresh the browser. Okay, so now here let's say if I click on if I let's say if I click on the, if I search for December, let's say, okay, so it is not applying the filters, right? So that means there is some problem. Okay, let me go back to the console, and in here no error. Okay, so no error. Let me go back here, and then so no. So let me go back here. So what you can do is, there are some errors in the style.and.core.css. What we can do is, so we can put some if condition, right? So we can, let me go back to the Eclipse, and what you can do is we can put some if condition. So once you get the value, if the value is undefined, put an if condition saying that if the value is equals to empty or undefined, or it is this, then remove the filters. Okay, so let's save this and go back to the Eclipse and refresh the browser, and let's see if it will work for December, right? So December is it's not working. Yeah, so what we can do is, let me go back to the Eclipse again. Yeah, yes, in here name filter, and this one we have everything is ready. This, yeah, this is ready, this is correct. Yeah, so what I can do is I'll go to this Eclipse, then let me go to open this, and then go to the yes, this is, and put a breakpoint in here, and go back to your Eclipse, not Eclipse, browser, and then refresh this. Okay, so refresh this, and then try to click on just try to search for D, not D, let's say student, and let's search for J. Okay, J, so we got here, and let's execute. Yeah, yes, yes, and yes, yeah, there is no error, and go back to your screen. Yeah, don't know, so the same code, it's debugging. I'm just debugging and it's executing. Yeah, so let me close this debugger. Yes, it is executing fine. Let's search for MAY, so it is searching for that. So let's say search for 22, it is searching for that 22. If you search for JULY, July, so it will search for that. If you search for December, see, it is searching for that. If you search for let's say some 3, yeah, 3 is there in this particular student, right? So this is how we are going to implement filters concept in SAP UI5. Okay, so let's have a look at the filters. Okay, so here what we are doing is we are getting the filter, and then sorry, we are getting the a list object, and then finally we are getting the binding of that items binding, and then we are checking for the value. If the value exists, then we are creating a filter object for with one property, and we are creating one more filter object with another property with a contains aggregation, in case if you want to implement a or condition between these two, right? So then obviously what you can do is you can use the create one more filter and then pass an array of filters, and then create and then you can use false, so that it will construct an or condition, okay, between these two filters, and then finally we are applying these filter on top of this binding. So accordingly it will accordingly it will apply the filters on top of the list. Okay, so if you can remove, you can see all these. Okay, so let me search for DEC, so you can click on this, you can see all the student 4 details. Okay, so this is how we are going to implement filters in SAP Wi-Fi. Thanks for watching.